Hello and welcome to Freedom Watch, your daily dose of raw liberty, streaming online at foxnews.com. I'm your host, Judge Andrew Napolitano, here defending freedom, defending your natural rights, and defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution. Now, the introduction that you hear from me at the beginning of each show, specifically when I say defending your right to have a government that stays within the confines of the Constitution, is the essence of Freedom Watch. ClimateGate is not only turning into an inconvenient truth for Al Gore, but it's actually becoming a repudiation of the entire theory behind global warming and the so-called science behind it. The hacked and released emails behind ClimateGate appear to suggest that scientists actually manipulated data that global warming is man-made. Now the latest climate change hullabaloo involves, guess who? Al Gore himself. Speaking in Copenhagen, he said new computer modeling suggests that 3/4 of the polar ice caps will melt during the summer of 2014. But there's one big problem. The climatologist who said this, Dr. Wisław Maslowski, whose work Gore's prediction is based on, is now refuting what Al Gore says he said. No surprise. Joining me now is Professor Walter Williams, economics professor at George Mason University. The title of his latest article is We've Been Had. Professor Williams, you're one of the greatest defenders of human freedom in the country today. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Judge.
What is Al Gore up to? How can he rely on scientific data which is repudiated by the very person on whom he says he's relying?
Well, it does not take much to get over on the American people. And I think one of the things that we have to realize is that this climate, global warming, is a religion. That is, you either believe it or you don't believe it. You have faith in it or you don't have faith in it. And the heck with the scientific data. Al Gore, he said that the polar caps are going to melt 5 years ago. And now he's coming again saying that they're going to melt 5 years in the future.
Where does he come up with a prediction so precise as to say, Professor Williams, in the summer of 2014, the ice caps are going to melt? I mean, who could make such a prediction, and based on what?
And the people who do the climate and do weather, they can't tell us what's going to happen next week in terms of it. But you know, I think one of the things we have to realize is that these people are arrogant. I mean, it's utter arrogance to think that man can make significant parametric changes in the earth. I've asked people, do you think if all 6 billion of us or 7 billion of us were to jump up and down all at one time, would we send the earth out of its orbit?
Unbelievable.
No, but however, see, the whole thing about this whole global warming, it's for control. That is, you can do anything. Congress can do anything in the name of saving the planet.
Right. And that's the argument that they'll make. In a recent piece that you wrote, which I was so happy to read earlier today, you pointed out that we had a period of warming in the Middle Ages. Let's see, could they blame that on coal-burning fuels? Could they blame that on 60-inch flat screens? Well, how do they justify that?
Well, you know, matter of fact, what they're trying to do, what these scientists, and it was shown in these emails, they're trying to disavow, they call it MWP, the medieval warm period. They're trying to say it did not happen. And the reason why they have to say, or they have to conjure up things to say that it did not happen, is because how can they explain that the Earth was much warmer than it is now during 800 and I think it's like 1200, 800 and 1200 AD. Now, so it's absolute fraud. That is, and you know, why do you think they ever called Greenland Greenland?
Because it was green, because flora and fauna were flourishing there.
That's right.
How bad is this scandal? How devastating, Professor Williams, is this scandal to the Al Gore crowd that these emails came out, whether they were the ones that were hacked by the Russians or the ones that were released pursuant to Great Britain's Freedom of Information Act?
I don't know. It ought to be devastating. It ought to be devastating to the whole climatology movement, and also it should be devastating to scientists in general. That is, many scientists, they knew what was going on, but they didn't say anything because they didn't want to risk their reputations, because these people can destroy your reputation. You have people in the global warming movement calling for Nuremberg-type trials for people who deny deny the idea that the planet is getting warmer.
Well, let me get this straight. They want to put people on trial because of their thoughts, not because they've harmed anybody, but because they don't accept the prevailing politically correct theology. I won't even call it ideology, theology.
That is absolutely right. And years ago, they did the same thing with Galileo. They wanted to put him on trial because he said he was advancing the Copernican theory that the Earth went around the sun rather than the other way around.
I'm a staunch pre-Vatican II Roman Catholic, but it took the Church 450 years to correct that mistake and apologize to Galileo. Where is all this going, and why is it that Al Gore and this nonsense is so popular today?
Well, you know, I think, Judge, it's a combination of several things, and one of them is that the American people, or people in general, they haven't been taught how to think. They haven't been taught how to question things, and it's a dumbing down of it's a dumbing down of the American people and people around the world that buy into this stuff. That is, anybody who will buy the notion that man, as I said earlier, that mankind can make significant parametric changes in the Earth. They can't think. They can't think. Or people buy the notion that there must be a certain temperature of the Earth that is right. I mean, there's a wrong temperature and there's a right temperature.
How do they explain the cooling periods that we have experienced in the 20th century, even after we began burning fossil fuels?
That's right. I think there's a cooling period from after World War II until 1977 that temperatures were declining, and there was a rapid economic growth during this period. And matter of fact, there's one other argument, Judge, is that at one time, the Earth was covered with, I believe, 1 or 2 miles of ice. And so the question is, it must have gotten warmer. And so what happened? Were they SUVs driving around that that melted all this ice?
I would love to hear Al Gore answer that one. We're chatting with Professor Walter Williams, professor of economics at George Mason University. What should people like you and me, Professor Williams, and the folks watching us now, who believe that global warming is basically hooey, designed by a class of individuals, unfortunately many of whom are now in the government, in an effort to control our private and public behavior, do about all this stuff?
I don't know. I think that we should stay informed ourselves and try to inform our fellow Americans what is being done to them. That is, and matter of fact, there are a couple of people who have said that whenever the American people find out that this great big hoax, a very, very costly hoax has been perpetrated against them, they're going to be as angry as hell. And I think our job is to kind of speed up that progress.
You know, you talked about prosecutions earlier. I wonder if anybody should be prosecuted for committing a fraud, for deliberately falsifying information or misinterpreting the information, or even, as I think you said in one of your articles, for attempting to hide or destroy documents that were subject to the Freedom of Information Act because they knew they'd be embarrassed or humiliated once these documents became public.
Well, I think they should go to jail. I think they should go to jail. That is, they're getting public money to do this research in the first place, and I think that the public can have some kind of claim on the data, and for them to burn the data or to destroy the data, I think it is a crime.
Well, if you think things are bad here under President Obama, they're worse under Gordon Brown in Great Britain. So let's not hold our breaths waiting for these people to be prosecuted. Professor Williams, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch.
Thank you, Judge, for inviting me. Bye.